Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I am so honored to have my friend Melissa with us today. Melissa Mira, thank you for being here, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited to dive into it. I have been wanting to interview Melissa since the day I met you, I think, for years. And here we are. So, Melissa is an unconscious integration coach and soul alchemist, guiding clients to ignite their genius in life and in love. Deeply scorpionic, with her North Node riding her ascendant in Scorpio, it's no wonder she's so committed to and obsessed with exploring the depths of the soul and psyche. Melissa has been engaging in psychedelic work and soul level transformation for over 30 years. She credits the insights she's received with guiding her journey into magic, the mind, and the power of the imaginal realms. She believes that music and dance are some of the most potent medicines available and sees them as powerful tools for evolving consciousness. Melissa is enamored and with exploration of innate human technologies and believes we have only begun to scratch the surface of what's possible. She's in a passionate 28-year relationship with her husband, Christian, who, by the way, is also awesome and also a good friend. Their partnership has endured many of life's challenges, yet they continue to find themselves even more in love, enjoying life with their three incredible teenagers who I've also met and who are also just as awesome. So, Melissa, I love interviewing people who I already know pretty well because now I get to hear this whole other depth of your story. I'm curious, how did you get into this work that you're doing now? And I am curious about what your old career path was. Were you ever working in a corporate job? Did you ever go down that safe path? And how did psychedelics play a part in all of this as well?
Yeah, 100%, Beth. I was on the journey of, get a degree, get a job, have someone else that I rely on to employ me. And I actually started as an environmental engineer, and I was working for the government. I was working as a civilian for the Navy in the environmental department, doing environmental work. My passion was the environment. And initially I wanted to get into forestry, but my dad kind of convinced me that engineering would be more lucrative. So I went down that path. And though the people that I worked with were really sweet, and I had a lot of flexibility to go and explore other things, I very quickly knew that it was not where I wanted to be, that I had like a deeper journey that I needed to make. So I did do that career for about 10 years, and it was really a learning opportunity in many ways. The exposure that I had, seeing what was kind of happening in the government, where I wanted to work in the environment to help save the environment. And really it was like, how can we get out of spending all this money on cleanup? So I was on the wrong team, and I realized pretty immediately that I needed to start to shift. So during that time, I went and got my yoga teacher training back in 2001 down in Costa Rica, my first venture to Costa Rica, and just started exploring other paths while maintaining that career as my source of income. And then when I got pregnant with my first child, my husband and I decided that I would be at home with our children. So just before I birthed my first son, I retired from that career. And then as I was at home with my children, kind of like guiding their journey, learning about health and wellness through, this new responsibility of raising other human beings, I really started to learn a lot. I think it was first like looking into vaccines. And actually before that, I had a friend who said, oh, well, you should look into home birth. And immediately I was like, home birth, that sounds crazy. But I was like, okay, I'll go to a meeting. And within 5 minutes of being at that meeting, I was sure that home birth was what I had to do. I was positive. And Christian was on board with me. He was a little more cautious about it, but he was on board. And I just kind of threw myself into learning about birth and how did we end up in the situation where it's such a medical event, and very quickly started to understand and trust the human body that much more, recognizing how many women have had births at home over the millennia with no incident, without a lot of guidance, even in many cases. And that kind of opened up, that and my yoga journey opened me up more to looking into health and understanding, holistic health and nutrition. So that continued, and then I got into, learning about vaccines, and then it was learning about fluoride. And the more I started to see, the more I started to question, like, what is this reality that I thought that I was living in, that seems to be turning up all of this new information that's just showing me a different side of what I believed reality was. Through that, I really got deep into health, and having the home birth, I really wanted to care for my children outside of the medical system. So I studied herbal health, and then I got into homeopathy, learned about homeopathy, and basically was able to raise 3 kids without going to the doctors, as minimal as possible. Every once in a while, I'd have to bring them in for a physical so they could play sports or whatever. But even those times that I would bring them in, the doctors would be stunned. They'd be like, wow, how are your kids so healthy? And, under my breath, I'd be like, well, because I bring them here as little as possible. But it was through that I really started to have a new perspective on health and healing, and eventually made the shift into health coaching, because I had people asking me, can you please help me become healthy? And finally, with enough people asking me, I was like, okay, I do think I can help you, and let's get started. And right away, I had a good amount of success with that, but I did notice that it was a little bit like whack-a-mole. So we would resolve one health issue, and then like a new thing would pop up, and then we would work with that, and a new thing would pop up. And I started to see that there was something deeper going on than, the symptoms that were emerging. There was something below that seemed to be more connected with the psyche. And that was when I started to learn about shadow work. And as soon as I found out about shadow work and what it was, I was like, this is absolutely the direction that I need to go. And I think that was my Scorpio emerging, just being like, yes, we need to look into the darkness, and we need to find the gifts that are there so that we can find our full potential. And I dove into my own shadow work for years, and really was able to experience profound transformation through that, and through the shadow work that is available through psychedelics, because I also was very much utilizing medicine. I think you mentioned in the bio at the beginning that it's been over 30 years, and I started to dabble with mushrooms in my teens, and I do think that really helped to open my mind more, and it made it easier for me to kind of see the facade of reality, and also be like, yeah, I think there's something else. I think there's something else back there, and really being curious about what that was. So utilizing all these different avenues from psychedelics and shadow work and natural health, and just my own experience in reality with relationships, with raising kids, to kind of peer open the veil a little bit and look deeper. Finding shadow work, and then even more recently, finding the tools that I now have in order to make transformation almost instantaneously. Once we can find the stimulus that exists in the mind, having tools now to be able to shift that, I've just seen such profound transformation in such a short amount of time.
And I will say, I have worked with Melissa myself and done this deeper shadow work and done some of the subconscious work. And um, as someone who's worked with psychedelics for so long and therapy and somatic modalities and other modalities, it was interesting. There were things that came up where I'm like, whoa, that's very activating. I didn't know that was there. So to me, there's always this deeper digging process. And you do this work that you call soul alchemy. I know you as like kind of like one of my sovereignty coaches. Let's talk about this work that you do now. I also want to talk about what sovereignty is because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around it. I think the word has been thrown around a lot for many years. I remember when I first started hearing someone use it in my field in one of my spiritual communities was maybe in 2017 or so.
Mhm.
And I remember being like, well, what does that really mean? What does this mean to you? And why is it important for people to even understand sovereignty?
So sovereignty, I feel like, is a really important concept to understand and begin to integrate, because it takes us from a place of feeling like we're a victim or like we're trapped in certain situations to understanding that we actually have the ability and the power within us if we're ready to reclaim it. This is the way that we can move forward in our lives to create the lives that we really want. And it's also the way that we can move forward in the collective to create a new evolution of humanity, which really nurtures everyone. And I know that that can be maybe the trigger with this idea of sovereignty. It's like, oh, well, you're just going to be independent and you're just going to worry about yourself. And that's not really what it's about. What it's about is recognizing that we have the strength inside of us to do and be the people that we want to be. And from that place, there is no longer a need to kind of lash out and attack other people. There's no longer a need to be stuck in a place of greed or feeling like you need more than someone else, because there's a contentment that arises inside. And if everybody has that contentment and that self-love and that recognition that they have this vast well of power inside of them, then there's no longer a need to try and take from someone else or try and hurt someone else. And when I say try, it's oftentimes those things are subconscious. So it's not so much that people are trying to do it. It's just that it's playing out as part of their programming. And that is what leads to, the disharmony in the world, where when we can recognize that we have the power within us to heal ourselves, to have the lives that we want, to have the love that we want, to have the experiences that our soul is really calling for, we just have this sense of peace and contentment inside, which when multiple people have peace and contentment inside, that is the resonant frequency of the planet. We hit a critical mass at a point, and that becomes the experience that we have here. And I'm a manifestor. I don't know how many of your audience are familiar with human design. I would imagine many of them. But as a manifestor, I have like really big visions, which, some people can be like, oh, you're crazy. You think you're going to change the whole world. And it's not that I feel like I'm going to do it myself. It's that I have the ability to see that this is possible now. And I want to live my life in a way that shows that we can do this, and also offer the support to people that are ready to say, like, yeah, I see that vision too, and I'm ready to do that as well.
I just want to point out, here you are doing environmental work. Because, it's interesting when you pointed out that the misunderstanding of sovereignty, because I think this came up a lot in 2020 where some people, because they said it to me even, well, that means you're only out for yourself. It's like this very like selfish way of being. And it's actually the opposite. It's like you say, if we find this deeper contentment and fulfillment from within, as I keep for years have been getting this vision of what I call this like sovereign pillar of light, that's like you, the earth, yourself, spirit. It's like It's just, that's it. Like, what matters other than that relationship? And if you really do that deeper work, then maybe you're not going to destroy the environment or pillage the earth or come from this place of scarcity and overuse something, or need toad medicine every weekend, or whatever it is. There's a lot of talk about, you know, in the medicine world of like, really, how do we get in right relationship with the medicines? And like you said, it's like, well, it's really coming into this right relationship on such a deeper level and starting from within. And that way, maybe we won't have wars, and we won't be bashing one another, and we won't turn external and blame external for everything, but come inward.
Yeah.
I'm curious, let's talk about how this is helpful for people who are on the medicine path or working with psychedelics, or even psychedelic facilitators and space holders, because it's very interesting. There's a lot of people who've been on this path a long time that maybe haven't really understood this or haven't integrated this work, even shadow work, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
We all think of ayahuasca or whatever, any psychedelics, like, oh yeah, it's a certain level of shadow work when you go in there. But then we see in reality, like, maybe people aren't doing this deeper work. Like, how do you come to terms with this, or kind of explain it for people on the psychedelic path?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful point, and it's something that I think is coming more into human awareness right now. And it's that, yes, you can do a lot of deep work with psychedelics, but that the majority of the work happens outside of the acute experience. So you have that really intense experience where you're seeing things, you're seeing deeper into your patterns, you're seeing deeper into the universe. And then, you come down from that experience, and now there needs to be some way of bringing what you learned, what you saw, into your everyday life. That is the integration. So the majority of the work, that's just kind of like the awareness piece. That's the awareness piece. And then from the awareness piece, just like with all of shadow work, it's like, once you have awareness, now how are you gonna work with that awareness? And oftentimes, we're seeing like some of our patterns that aren't helping us. Well, how then, outside of that experience, can we find that pattern, and can we find what is the gift that actually lives inside of that pattern, and then bring that gift forward, instead of, it's not just like, okay, I was doing this, I need to just stop doing this. That energy was there to bring something forward into the collective. So I really think about integration as this process of taking what we have learned about ourselves and about the world, and really alchemizing it into the gift that it came here to be. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And when you're sitting here talking, I'm thinking about what keeps popping up are these really dark ceremonies I've had. And I'm sure I'm not the only person. I'm sure there's someone listening. And this fear of shadow work. Because I personally believe this is one of the biggest needs on planet Earth, especially right now.
Yeah.
But it's very uncomfortable. Even the psychedelic space, I've been friends with people who were on this path and then had some very hard, challenging, what we might call shadowy type experiences, and then they just never come back. Which, even I've gotten to that point where I'm like, do I want to do this? Like, this is so unpleasant. But then, how can we make shadow work something that people actually want to do? Like, how do you come to terms with making this, like, almost like giving it a new name, where it's like, this isn't bad, everybody. This isn't like, a hard thing, or maybe it is, or maybe I'm wrong. But I'm sure you hear people talk about, like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to think about this. That's in the past, or, I'd rather focus on this. Like, how do you come to terms with that?
Yeah, 100%. I totally hear that. And that's why in my container, I've really looked at the term shadow work. And I know that right there scares people. And really what it is unconscious integration. We've got these unconscious pieces of ourselves, and they're here. They're here with a gift. So we want to just come to them gently, with love, and recognize that this is a gift. And maybe it looks scary, but how many people that have done psychedelics have seen like a scary vision and then asked it, like, what are you trying to tell me? And then immediately had that vision soften and it deliver a message of love. So for me, I love this work. I think it's so exciting. It's so rewarding. It's so gratifying. I have no fear around it whatsoever. And again, I think that is tied to my deeply scorpionic nature. I'm just like, yeah, let's see what's there and see what's inside. It's almost like Christmas, or, you know, just unwrapping a gift. In my mind, it's not scary at all. And I am really happy now to have tools where you don't even really have to rehash much. We can just find out what is the map that's presenting, what is the mental map. And this is a terminology that my teacher, Dr. Robert D. McDonald, uses. But what is the map, the mental map that's creating the emotion that's uncomfortable? And then we utilize these tools to reprogram the mind, not to eliminate memories. Like, you can still access your memories fine, but these things that are triggering the fear, we disarm them. And in the process of disarming them, we recognize that every single part of us is wholly in love with us. So there's nothing to be afraid of. These negative patterns that we have, they're here to serve a positive purpose. It's just that maybe they got fractioned off at a point when we were younger, and now they're not able to be in their full expression. And that part of ourselves doesn't have access to all the resources that we, as grown adults that have had all these experiences, have available to us. So it's not scary at all at this point. The work that I do, and that's really why I wanted to let people know, like, this is unconscious integration. It's not a scary thing. It's a fun thing. We get to see what gifts have been here the whole time, and we actually get to kind of open them up and offer them to the world. And yeah, it doesn't have to be painful. It's not regurgitating, you know, the painful things that you've been through over and over and over again. It's just like, well, what's present for you? What's uncomfortable? Okay. So what is it that makes it uncomfortable? And then we determine the most effective process to work with that particular piece of information. We integrate it and then move forward. And it's incredible, the profound, dramatic changes that can happen in one session.
Which I've seen with Melissa, myself. And actually, yeah, a lot of the modalities Melissa has studied are, you know, whether it's with Melissa or someone else, to me, have been some of the most effective modalities, all, like, out of anything, you know, especially, by the way, I keep saying, especially for medicine people, it's like, it's not just the medicine. It's this really important integration work. And for, at least for my experience and what I've seen with clients, is when you do these kind of reprogramming modalities, like different forms of NLP and subconscious work, I tend to see the most results in people. And it's been very interesting for me. It's been one of the most powerful integration tools along with the medicine. But this is actually what I wanted to ask you. It's been interesting just being in this world for so long and witnessing, you know, there's a lot of people that turn to medicine as like their number one and maybe only tool, you know, like, let's just go do a ceremony, or we'll go hit bufo again, or more microdosing, or another psilocybin journey, and I'll feel better. But then, you know, because I encounter them as clients often where they say, like, I can't figure out what's in the way, or I think I'm blocked, but I don't know what it is. And I even came to Melissa with, like, okay, there's this one thing that I still can't really get to, and I can't figure it out. Medicine hasn't really given me the answers to it yet. I'm still like chipping away at it every day. But, what do you think is going on there? Is it that people are not even willing to look, or is it actually so deeply subconscious, or is it that they're not like really working with the tools? Like, what is that? When I'm sure you get people saying this, like, I don't know what it is, or I'm not sure what's in the way, like, or the people, I hear this one a lot, money blocks. I just have money blocks, you know? How do you explain all this?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think the importance of integration cannot be understated. That I even had this experience in my journey where, when I first found ayahuasca, it was really so enlightening that I was just like, oh, I need to do this more. I need to find out more. I need to learn as much as I can. And I, went into a pattern of sitting many times in a row, and I was getting all this information. It was so powerful, but there wasn't time to actually enact the things that I was learning. So it really took me getting to a point where I recognized, like, this starts to feel disrespectful to just keep going back and asking for more, when I haven't addressed the answers that I've already received. So there was a period where I took a long sabbatical, and I just started to look at, okay, what was there, what came up for me, and how can I bring that more fully into my life, and show the gratitude that I have from being able to receive that information. And I think with people that are doing a lot of medicine, that's really the biggest key, is that just take a little bit of space to really get the full teaching and the full integration of that teaching before you go back and get more, because it's like, it can become overwhelming. Now I have all this stuff. And I know that my experience in those ceremonies started to change, where I was kind of going in with a little bit of guilt, and just that, like, entering that space from that mindset already puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage. So if you're able to go in and really work with the information that you've already received and process it and get to a place where you feel like you've really honored that experience, I think we have the ability to get so much more out of it. And then speaking to this concept of people having blocks, yes, that is actually the most challenging part of the work that I do with clients, is like, what is it that's really there? When I say it's the most challenging part, it's actually, it doesn't have to be challenging at all. I think that we think of the unconscious as like this mystical thing that, like, it's holding information from us, but really it's just what's below our level of consciousness. It's just below what we're aware of. And we can very easily peer into those spaces. And again, the unconscious, it wants us to stay alive. It wants us to survive. So sometimes there will be patterns that are set up that the unconscious is like, well, this is what I've done this whole time, and I'm still alive. So this works. So I'm going to keep doing this. But understanding that the unconscious wants what's best for you. Every part of you wants what's best for you. It just doesn't necessarily know how to do that yet. So when we start to go in and we are very gentle with ourselves, and we say, thank you for all the work that you've been doing for me. And I want to help you get what it is that you really want for me. We can partner with the unconscious, and the unconscious holds every piece of information that we need. So it's really just trusting the unconscious to give the information that's needed in the moment that it's needed. And I see it, as long as that level of trust and rapport is there, I see that the information just rises to the surface right when we need it.
Amazing. I love going into this. This is one of my favorite things. I'm very much like you too. I have never really been afraid of the shadows. I'm always curious to know what's behind there. I don't know why I never actually even thought about the gift piece of it. I
Mm,
really like that. But for me, it was really like, even as a kid, I used to have this game where I played with myself. I would just lay there and I would go in and try to look at my brain and figure out what was going on there, because I just wanted to know. It was like such there was so much mystery.
yeah.
And it's been interesting, the deeper we dive in. I mean, I remember having a full activation with Melissa. I think it was one of our first sessions where one little thing, the tiny little thing was uncovered, where I was like, if we didn't have that presencing of that container, I would have easily brushed over it and said, nah, like, no way. And then, when it came up, it was like I could feel an activation. And that was something I've been working with,
Mhm.
like, now I have an opportunity to dive into this more and bring it to the light. So this is what I wanted to talk about next, is what is the alchemy that you speak of? How can we, especially, by the way, medicine people, or, leaders who are already on this path of healing and growth and transformation, and maybe they are kind of feeling stuck, or like there's, something in the way. Because again, I hear this. It's one of the number one things I hear. It's like, I'm doing great and something's in the way and I don't know what it is.
Mm.
But yeah, what is the alchemy, and how will that affect us? Like, how do you approach, soul alchemy with the unconscious, and this kind of shadowy aspect of the work that you do?
Yeah. So in the work that I do, we are looking for the things that the client feels like is in the way of what they're trying to achieve. And the alchemy is really, once we find that thing, so maybe it's a memory from childhood. Maybe it's just like an image that comes up in our mind that we're not even consciously aware of, but as we tune in and we trust the unconscious shows us the image. We, as human beings, assign meaning to things, and that meaning starts to play out in our lives. So when we're able to find these things that are standing in our way, we can go in and we basically reassign new meaning that doesn't feel scary, that doesn't feel fearful, that doesn't feel uncomfortable. And we start to tap into this inner resource. As we're able to do that, we recognize that suffering, human suffering, is essential in these realms. It is through human suffering that we evolve and grow, and we tap into the gift that is present in suffering. And, if there is no other gift that we can locate in our suffering, there is always the gift of compassion. And compassion allows us to relate to our fellow human beings from a place of love and acceptance. So the alchemy really is that we can find these things that are standing in our way, and we can see that they're there as evolutionary tools to bring us to the next level. It's like we could move through our entire life here on Earth and not have anything painful or bad ever happen. And what would be the point? What would be the point? Because there would be no growth. And I mean, my personal view on spirituality is that we're coming from source. We're coming from this place of perfection. So we're not incarnating on the planet thinking like, oh, this is going to be paradise. It's just going to be so simple. No, we come here. This is Earth School. And Earth School is for our souls to grow and evolve. And our souls grow and evolve through the experience of at least some limited suffering. Some people have, magnitudes of suffering, things that we couldn't even imagine. And if they're able to find the gift, I'm not saying that people are always able to do that, but when you're able to find the gift, it's like these people make quantum leaps in their lives. They make quantum leaps. It's like, wow, how are you able to do that? And it's like, well, I overcame this suffering. And that's something that I seen in my relationship, where My husband and I have been together for 28 years. We've been through a lot, having, 3 teenagers and just all these different phases. It's almost like lifetimes we've lived together. And there have been some serious challenges that we have overcome. And it's like, when you're in it, it does not feel good. It doesn't feel good at all. It's very painful. It's very challenging. It's scary. But in kind of surrendering to what is there and moving through it, coming to the other side, it's like, wow, we overcame that. Like, we can overcome anything. Like, we really have such a strong foundation here that we now have experienced sustaining through a hurricane or a tsunami.
So good. When you're talking, what's coming up is also you're talking about suffering, and considering we look around in the world right now, it feels like there's a lot of suffering going on, which I've been really exploring. I'm like, is this new? It doesn't really feel new. It feels like it's been like this since day one, at least in this incarnation. And I've heard, people have said like, oh, well, technically everything's better than ever, but we're seeing all the suffering more and more. I don't know if that's true. I mean, who knows? I do believe it is part of the human condition. But when I'm listening to you speak, I wonder what would happen if all of humanity was willing to do this work? And do you see some kind of shift happening? Like, I would love to get into the global stage. Like, how is this kind of work maybe the answer for a lot of people? And do you believe that there's going to be an increase of people doing this work? I mean, I personally have wondered about the growth of psychedelics and sacred medicines, and to wonder if people stepping into that are eventually just going to be brought to all this other work. I mean, what are your, because I know you're a lot like me, where you get a lot of these bigger visions, and I'm very much like you, where it's like, I have this big mission. I'm not going to fix the world myself, but like, this is part of why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering, do you ever think about this like on a global collective level, how this is potentially here for us?
I think about it all the time.
I figured that.
Yeah, I really do feel like this is the work that can usher in a new evolution for humanity. And you spoke to the suffering that's happening in the world, and it's incredibly painful. It's incredibly painful because we are having an opportunity, and it is really an opportunity to witness exactly how devastating this is, just exactly how painful it is to see these children losing their lives, parents losing their children. And it's like, how can this be happening? But you're right. This is a genocide, and genocides have been happening in our history over and over and over again. You can look at almost every continent on the planet, and there is some history of genocide there. So it's not new, but that doesn't mean that it's not that much more present in our field, because we have access to really see what's happening. There are people on the ground with cameras that are sending us live feeds of what's going on. And I think it's really important to have an awareness and to tap into the suffering that really is present, because it's innately human to feel that level of pain when you see another human suffering in that way. We don't want that. And for me, what I see is that we have been put in this position to believe that governments are here to keep us safe. When the deeper I look, the more I see that actually there's in so many cases, the things standing in the way of us actually being in touch with our humanity, actually seeing other people and being like, we can't let people experience this. And seeing that, this current conflict, it's so government driven, but the answer, in my eyes at least, is not begging and pleading with governments to please stop doing this. This is not okay, and this is not what we want to see happening. Because in asking for our power, we're actually giving our power away. So it's my vision that if we are able to understand that safety is not an outside, it's not an external condition, it's an internal condition, that we can come to a feeling of safety in ourselves that tells us, okay, I don't need these exterior structures making up arbitrary rules that I basically have no say in whether I agree with that or not in order to be okay in the world. And if we can, as a species, which I do believe we totally have the ability to do this right now, I don't even think it needs to be anything, quote unquote, revolutionary. I don't think it needs to be anything aggressive or forceful. It's really just our attention is a currency. Our attention is a currency that's been utilized to create the world as it is. So if we are able to reclaim our attention and focus it on what it is we're trying to do, what it is we want to see, that very quickly these other structures, they just start to crumble on their own. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to ask permission from these powers. It's like, in asking for permission, we're saying you have the right to tell me what to do. And I don't feel that that is a right that has been earned. The deeper you look into what is happening in the world, you see that a lot of the problems that we face are really created by the governance itself.
Why are so many people willing to give up their power? That's what I always wonder too, is like, because I said something to my friend just a couple days ago. I said something about people are lazy. By the way, not everybody's lazy, and I know that, but it was something about the kind of a gist of the collective, like, oh, people are just getting kind of lazier, or beaten down or worn down, or like even the distraction and the attention, like the amount of distraction there is these days, and the amount of people that are kind of bypassing what's really happening, or just dissociating because I wonder, I'm like, is it because this is just easier, or because we're so traumatized we can't really take it all in, and so it's just a world of a lot of dissociation? But what do you think it is?
Yeah, so I really feel like we have been programmed in many ways from the time we incarnated on this planet. We've been programmed with a lot of ideas and beliefs that we don't even realize are programming. We just think it's the way that things are. And I'll use, government as an example. Like, we weren't raised saying, like, does government make sense? It was just like, we have a government and this is how it works. And this is how you are able to participate in that. So, the structures of control that are currently working in the world, they have access to the psychological knowledge on how the mind works. And they've utilized that. It's very effective. It's very effective. And when you come to understand some of this, recognizing that human beings are being hypnotized most of the time. Most of the time, the words that are being spoken, the sounds that we're hearing, the images that we're hearing, they're shifting our mind in a very subtle way. And because there are people that have that information and have been able to utilize it to create certain beliefs in us, it's been really effective. But once we recognize that we have the ability to take back control of our own minds, and in so doing that, take back our own power, we will see that we have the ability to shift so much more in our individual realities than we ever recognized before. And as we shift our individual realities, that's how we impact the collective, by saying, okay, well, I'm going to take responsibility for this thing in my life that up till this point, I was like, this is that person's problem or that person's problem. And I want to differentiate that from what I'm saying about the government and governance in general, is that, you know, I don't want to set it up as like an us versus them situation. It's really just recognizing I have the ability within myself to shift my experience. And the more I can live from that centered place and live as an embodied example of that, the more the people around me are going to recognize that for themselves. And they're going to be able to do the same thing. And it's not even that we need everybody to do shadow work. There's such thing as a critical mass. And it's like once a certain number of people are living in that way, there's a shift that happens throughout the collective that really changes the entire world.
I'm laughing because this came up so much on Friday night. I taught this class that I've done every year for the last like 8 or 9 years, but it was about like manifesting and goals and the new year and like creating your reality. And it was just it's always so interesting to hear the beliefs that come up and the yes, I want these things, but it's not possible. And it's just I've gotten over the years, I've gotten like just a little more feisty with it, where it's like I even said to someone, I was like, do you see how that's ego to believe that you can't, but Richard Branson can?
Right.
You know what I mean? Or anybody, anything. It's like, well, why you? Actually, like being a victim is really like being in your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just one example of like, okay, this mind, like you said, take control of our own mind, take back the power of our mind. And I'm wondering, have you ever wondered about the increase of popularity in the psychedelics and the sacred plant medicines and what's happening on planet Earth? And I'm curious what your views are on why this is growing, why it's here now, what it all means, if there's even a meaning. Because of course that's my mind wanting to make a meaning, but do you see these medicines playing some kind of part in, what's happening on the world stage and what might happen going forward? And, I'm curious what your thoughts are around the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely see psychedelics helping to kind of break that programming a little bit and allow new ideas to kind of come into our psychic space. They're really expanding in so many ways. And if I didn't start doing psychedelics when I was younger, I don't know, obviously my life would be different in some ways, but I do feel like it really expanded me in a way where I was ready to look at things from different perspectives. I was ready to say like, okay, well, this is what I've experienced so far, but what if something else is true? What if something else is possible? And it's through that experience of openness and being willing to look at things in different ways and not being so kind of stuck in this structured way of believing that has allowed me to grow and change and evolve in so many ways that has really brought me to a place of such contentment and peace, even with the devastation that's happening in the world. I'm still able to access this space of peace inside of me, this space of contentment, this space of joy and love. And I don't know that would have been possible if my journey wasn't also partially driven through these realms of psychedelics and leading me to more openness. I think that as we move forward, yes, more people are engaging with psychedelics, and I think as with anything else, it's like, is it too much? Are you giving yourself time and space? Are you using it as a crutch? We need to be careful of those things and just kind of tune in and really be vulnerable and be authentic with ourselves and recognize if we need to shift our relationship. But But the ability to engage with these medicines, I think, is such a huge gift to humanity. And I think it aligns astrologically. I'm not an expert in astrology, but I know that have been some astrological transits which have really ushered in this access point for psychedelics. And I see it shifting so much. So I think it will continue to be a really profound way for people to open up. And I think that utilizing psychedelics in conjunction with all these different integration techniques like somatics and the reprogramming techniques really is the way that we shift and evolve human consciousness.
It's funny, by the way, an episode just came out today when we were recording this about astrology and psychedelics, because I actually did ask the same thing. I'm like, is there a transit? But what she said is there's so much, there's so many multiple transits.
Yeah.
But yes, it's like the age. We're in the turning of the ages. It's huge.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you answered that, because I've gotten this message for many years that, yeah, it's beautiful that they're growing and now it's hitting the mainstream and now there's moms on mushrooms and so on. But at the same time, they're not, it's like, are you giving your power away to even the medicines? And like you said, it's the integration. It's this day to day, this moment to moment work. And that's where I'm just so glad you're doing this work, because I believe that to me, some of the most profound, healing, and I put this in quotes because I don't even love using that word healing, but I've had those moments of the healing. And like you said, like things just magically kind of gone. And I've never had this level of inner peace before where when we off camera, I was like, yeah, I'm laughing at how crazy my year was last year. And even in the midst of like the biggest challenges of my life during the last year, I was able to have this recognition that it was all just for my growth and evolution, and I was going to be okay. And it wasn't, even though it was hard, it was like there was still that peace always underlying it.
Yeah.
And almost like joy and laughter. And now that it's kind of, past a bit, or mostly, hopefully all, I can like just laugh and know like, oh, major soul expansion period. And, there's always something on the other side. So that's where I'm glad you're doing this work. And, when I see people in that suffering or in the loops, there's a lot of looping going on out there, especially in the psychedelic space as well. It's like, well, ask yourself if you're doing, the true integration, this unconscious integration work. My last couple questions. Do you have hope for the future of this planet? I know it's a big one, but generally, like, are you an optimist of where things are going in the rest of our lifetime, or your children's lifetimes? Like, how do you feel about what is happening?
I'm a total optimist, and I am a dreamer, and I am constantly dreaming of, what's possible right now. So I feel very optimistic. I feel like, again, as much trauma and devastation and horrifying things are coming to light in the world, just touching in with the understanding that these things have been here the whole time, and that through doing this work, through looking into the shadows, that's where they're starting to come up to the surface. So we're seeing them, and they're much more obvious. So, my former life, before I started to realize what was actually happening in the world, I thought life was a certain way. And then through the work that I did, I realized, oh, it's a different way. And there's some scary things that are happening out there. But through years of work with the fears that come up, and with the visions in my ceremonies, and my experiences with my family, I have come to this place of deep peace, recognizing that, like you said, we're not going to transcend human experience. So there's always going to be something that's uncomfortable, but it's, can we move into a place where we feel more empowered to work with what it is? Can we move to a place where we feel more trusting to surrender into what it is? And can we continue to like evolve and grow through it? So it's not like we're looking for everything in our life to be perfect all the time. This is planet Earth. We came here for the full spectrum of emotion and experience, and that will continue to unfold, I'm sure. But as we gain more awareness in our ability to shift our own realities, and through that shifting of our own realities, shift the collective reality, I think we come to a place where it all just starts to feel, we start to feel trust around it. We start to understand that, oh, I think I decided to come here because I knew I was going to get something out of this. And I feel myself growing through these experiences. So it's like you said, staying in touch with that inner peace, even through the suffering, even through the grief, even through the challenges, really getting to a place where we have that inner resource of love to draw from.
So beautifully said, and I couldn't agree more. I feel the same way. I'm an optimist, and I do believe we chose this, even with the challenges. And there's something here,
Yeah.
and we will see how it all unfolds.
Yes.
So, Melissa, let's hear, what do you have coming up in your business and your offerings? Where can people find you? What are your goals for this year, and how can people work with you?
Yeah, my goals for this year are really just to help as many people as possible. I worked for a long time with Carolyn Elliott, who I believe you've interviewed on the show before. She's shifted her name to Carolyn Lovewell now. She has an amazing book, Existential Kink, which I highly recommend because it really sheds light on like, oh, that's what's happening in my psyche. And then actually through the work that I did with her, I found the teacher that I'm working with now, who's Dr. Robert D. McDonald. And he has the destination method, which, I went to go learn some tools, and he just revolutionized everything I understood about my coaching practice, and also simultaneously gave me some of the most powerful tools that I have ever experienced. And it's really profound to see the changes that can happen. I have been working with these tools with clients for the past about a year now. And what I'm seeing is possible really makes me excited for the future, because I recognize that if people are able to resolve their grief, integrate their conflicts, resolve the shocking images or memories that they have, resolve their traumatic memories, that we can really come into that state of deep peace. And then moving forward in our lives, again, like I said, if something unfolds that's challenging, we're more resourced. So we're able to handle these things more effectively, more gracefully. And as we do that, we continue to build confidence. And as we build confidence, we are a living embodiment of this new way of being. And it just spreads. So my teacher, Dr. Robert, his mission in life is to heal the heart of the world. And I feel very on board with that mission. So I'm excited to work with as many clients as I can. I have just kind of updated my website. My kids are a little bit older, so I'm really feeling like I can step more deeply into this work now, and the results I've already seen are so exciting to me. I just absolutely love the work that I do. It's so rewarding, just to be able to kind of sit and be that space holder and really, just feel love for my clients and their experience, what they're going through, and really have tools that can help them change their lives.
Well, we'll have all your links right here in the show notes. I personally need to book another session with you very soon. And Melissa, it was such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for this work that you're doing. Thank you, your Scorpio placements, for being one of the people on this planet leading this journey into the depths of our soul and our psyche. But it's time, and especially anybody on the medicine path that's listening, I cannot recommend this as an integration tool enough. I mean, this has been my own path, and if you want real results, this is it. So thank you so much for being here. So good to have you.
Thank you, Beth. It was really lovely to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.